Hi there, it's Nick Dutch back again one more time. Today I'm talking to you about superstition and essentially the role of superstition and the importance essentially of the superstitions of tradition. That's right, I'm actually suggesting that there is a role and an importance, but I think one can only actually use that role and importance if one can separate or compartmentalize one's understanding of what one is doing in many different ways, on many different levels. For instance, I could have a rabbit's foot in my pocket, of course, so long as it was hygienically prepared, for the purposes of good luck. I would intellectually know, and as by way of fact, that the rabbit's foot itself would have no influence upon the outer world whatsoever. Some people would say, oh no, it's there's some kind of morphic resonance associated with the rabbit's foot itself. Yes. This is something that I personally would be rather skeptical of. Because even if it does have some kind of morphic field, then I'm sure its influence would be a damn sight less effective than doing the next right thing. But let's say I have this rabbit's foot in my pocket, and I've been using this rabbit's foot, so to speak, during a time of life when I have been deliberately, and by way of a hobby rather than necessarily by way of studying in the same manner as a science, reading fictitious works about charms, about, talismans and things that you can carry or put in your pocket that's supposed to bring you good luck. Maybe I've also been reading stories about rabbits, and I've been trying to build up in my imagination some of the characteristics, or the energy, so to speak, the symbolic power of the rabbit. And so, this information, this would be buried somewhere in my subconscious mind. Also, taking into account that one of the attributes of the rabbit is vigilance. I'm sure you remember the character of Thumper from Watership Down, the one who bangs his foot against the ground to be a symbol or a sign to all the other rabbits that some trouble is coming. So maybe during the time when I have the rabbit's foot in my pockets, I'm programming myself or instructing myself to be a little more vigilant, a little more careful, more painstaking with accurate work. So when I'm, let's say, doing my own personal accounts, I'm more likely to notice when there is a figure which has gone awry. Maybe I'm more capable, shall we say, of paying attention to small details when I'm communicating with one of my clients, and I'm therefore able to see precisely where it is they have the main issues in their life, and I can therefore help them with greater ease. Would I then be able to say that the rabbit's foot itself had some kind of magical power all by itself? Or indeed that the rabbit's foot itself had somehow worked? I think I would have to say no on both counts. Or maybe it would be more accurate to say, we don't know. But despite the fact that through all intellectual reasoning I would be aware that the rabbit's foot itself would not have any capacity to create change in the outer world, it does seem to have the capacity to create some kind of change within the inner world of the individual who is using it, provided, of course, they have provided themselves with sufficient and, I would say, in-depth brain training, so to speak, or mind training, or psychological training, through the reading of appropriate stories, and connecting ideas with symbols. Now, I would say this form of programming can happen deliberately. Namely, you could deliberately choose to develop a superstitious form of behavior around the rabbit's foot and turn that into your talisman of choice. Or alternatively, you could see the problem from the other angle, and you could do an in-depth, honest study of yourself, your own character, the associations that you have between different objects and different symbols, and work out what things would already have some kind of bearing to play upon your own ability to pay attention to things in the outer world. as well as how objects, colours, and so on and so forth could have an influence upon your character and your effectiveness when dealing with any particular subject. Maybe you already do this. Comedians, for instance, are supposed to have a bit of superstition associated with clothing. They may have a comedy sock that they might always wear because it makes them feel funnier. Just by example, obviously not all comedians would have a particular sock that they would wear when going on stage. Or if they did, I bloody well hope they wash it. Or maybe when you've gone to an examination, maybe you've had a lucky mascot. Maybe it was there to provide you with comfort or reassurance, and maybe the comfort and reassurance it provided was part of the magic itself. But if your ability to be slightly more vigilant and accurate or intelligent, or to be just slightly more efficient in your day-to-day work is improved with superstition, therefore there is a value to it. One of my favourite TV shows over the past few years has been Deadliest Catch, and there was one character in it who had this tendency to always spit in a certain type of food container prior to going out fishing. He had developed a superstition about that one particular ritualistic behaviour. And he said that sailors and fishermen have been superstitious for thousands of years. They must be doing something right then. And although through reason and logic, or whatever it is, or science maybe, we can say that ritualistic behaviour of this particular nature doesn't necessarily affect the outside world, we can be honest about ourselves as humans and realise that we are irrational creatures, and it is irrational influences which can affect us in many different ways, sometimes subtly and sometimes ways which are more major. So as a result of that, I would say yes, superstition has a role to play, and one could even say especially in the 21st century, when life is probably a little more fragile and complex than it's ever been in our history. God bless.